They beat her dog while she screamed. But that silence sparked a storm no one could escape.
They thought no one was watching. In a quiet suburban yard, 3 boys did the unthinkable, beating a loyal German shepherd while a little girl screamed for help that never came. No neighbors stepped in. No adults called out. Just silence and heartbreak. But what they didn't expect was that the man 2 houses down, haunted by his own past, would hear the cry they all ignored. What followed wasn't just a fight for the dog's life, but for something much deeper. A broken child's voice, a town's conscience, and a bond between a girl and her dog that would change everything. This is a story you won't forget. Before we begin, make sure to like this video and tell us in the comments. Where in the world are you watching from? Lily Hart was 9 years old and already knew what it meant to lose more than most people twice her age. Her mother had passed away from cancer the year before, leaving behind only a closet full of worn-out scarves, a garden she never got to finish, and a single unforgettable gift, Scout. A 2-year-old German shepherd with deep amber eyes and a loyalty that didn't waver, even in storms. He wasn't just a pet. He was the only thing Lily had that didn't leave. Her father, still drowning in grief and work stress, spent more time at his job than at home. The house was quiet, too quiet, but in that silence, Scout had become everything. Her protector, her playmate, her bedtime guard. The backyard was their world. Every afternoon, Lily would run barefoot through the patchy grass while Scout chased butterflies and barked at squirrels like it was his life's mission. That Saturday started like all the others. Sunlight spilled across the fence. Lily was on the ground under the big oak tree, drawing chalk hearts on the concrete. Scout sat nearby, ears perked, tail flicking side to side. But that peace shattered in seconds. 3 older boys from the neighborhood jumped the fence. No warning, no reason, just trouble on their faces. Scout barked and leapt in front of Lily without hesitation, growling with everything he had. But they didn't flinch. One of them, tall with a cruel smirk, picked up a metal rake from the garden bed. Scout growled once more. Then came the first blow. Lily screamed, begged, cried, but it was like the world had gone deaf. No doors opened. No neighbors appeared. The only sound was metal against flesh over and over until Scout collapsed, his body trembling. Then still. Lily fell over him, clutching his bloodied fur, shaking. Her small fingers tried to wipe away the blood like it was just dirt. Her nails scratched the wooden fence, trying to climb, trying to get someone, anyone, to help. But no help came. Not one. Eventually, the boys leapt, laughing. The rake dropped. The fence creaked back into place, and the yard returned to its quiet. But this wasn't the same quiet anymore. This was the kind of silence that stays in your bones, the kind you carry, the kind you never forget. And as Lily laid on the ground, whispering, "Please don't go," into Scout's fur, something inside her broke. Not her innocence, because that was taken the moment no one came to help. What broke was her belief that the world would protect the good ones. But what she didn't know, not yet, was that 2 houses down, someone had heard that final scream. Someone who'd been broken once, too. And he was about to step into her life in a way that would change everything. Caleb Monroe wasn't the type of man who kept quiet when something felt wrong. Not anymore. At 55, he'd lived through the kind of moments that either break you or wake you up, and for him it had been both. A retired firefighter, Caleb had spent years charging into burning buildings, pulling strangers out of nightmares. But no training ever prepared him for the weight of failure. And failure had a name. Her name was Emily. 8 years old, soft blonde hair, a room filled with stuffed animals, and a bedroom door that wouldn't open fast enough. That one haunted him. So now he fixed old trucks, repaired rusty engines, drowned his guilt under the hood of a 1984 Chevy that never stopped stalling. That afternoon, he was elbows deep in motor oil, humming along to classic rock, when a sound sliced through the air like glass. Not a typical scream, not the kind of high-pitched shriek kids let out when they're roughhousing. No, this one was different, raw, cracked, desperate. He froze. It only lasted a few seconds, but it was enough. Caleb dropped his wrench, wiped his hands on his shirt, and bolted down the driveway. He didn't ask questions. He didn't knock. He climbed the fence and found chaos. There she was, Lily, barefoot, face streaked with dirt and tears, her tiny body folded over the limp figure of a German shepherd. Blood stained her hands, her knees, her shirt, but she didn't seem to notice. All she could do was whisper over and over again, "Don't go. Please don't go." Caleb stopped cold. His heart twisted. For a second, he saw Emily. Same size, same helpless look. He blinked hard. Not this time. Not again. Slowly, he stepped closer. "Hey!" he said, his voice low and careful. Lily flinched, curling tighter around the dog. "It's okay," Caleb added, kneeling. "I'm not here to hurt you. I'm here to help him." No response. Just the sound of Scout's shallow, rattled breathing. He took off his jacket and gently draped it over the dog's battered body. Checked his pulse. It was faint, but it was there. Then, without another word, Caleb slid his arms under Scout, careful, slow, like lifting a child, and hoisted him into his arms. Scout didn't make a sound. Neither did Lily. Caleb looked at her, standing frozen with her fists clenched and tears falling in silence. "You coming with me?" he asked, not waiting for an answer. He walked toward the fence, Scout's weight pressed against his chest. When he turned back, she was right behind him, climbing through the gate barefoot, her small steps determined. They didn't say a word in the car. She sat in the passenger seat, hugging her knees, eyes locked on Scout's side, watching for the rise and fall. Caleb drove like the road didn't matter. No father came out to ask what happened. No neighbor leaned over a porch railing. No one even looked up. And that told Caleb everything. This wasn't just about a dog. This was about a little girl left behind by everyone who should have protected her. So when they pulled up to the emergency animal hospital, and the receptionist hesitated, "Are you the owner?" Caleb didn't blink. "No," he said, "but he's family to that girl. So yeah, I am now." And with that, he pushed through the doors, carrying a dying dog, followed by a silent girl, and left behind a neighborhood that should have been ashamed of its silence. The moment Caleb pushed through the glass doors of the emergency animal hospital, the air shifted. Nurses froze. A vet tech dropped a clipboard. Scout hung motionless in his arms, like a weight too sacred to be spoken about. Blood had soaked through Caleb's jacket, but he didn't even glance down. He locked eyes with the nearest staff member and said one word, "Help!" and they moved. Scout was whisked away into the back, a trail of red dripping down the white tile floor. A vet, young, focused, already gloved, rushed in behind him. No forms, no questions, just urgency. Caleb turned to see Lily still standing by the door. She hadn't moved, hadn't blinked. Her fists were clenched so tightly her knuckles looked ghostly. Her shirt was torn, shoes missing, knees scraped raw. But she wasn't crying anymore. That was almost worse. Caleb knelt beside her. "He's in good hands," he said gently. "They're gonna do everything they can." She didn't speak, didn't nod, just stared through the doors like if she blinked, Scout would disappear. They were asked to wait in the lobby. The room was clean and warm, with posters of smiling golden retrievers and pamphlets about dental care for cats. Felt fake. Too soft for what just happened. Caleb bought her a juice box from the vending machine and handed it to her. She didn't take it, so he set it on the table and sat beside her in silence, not trying to fill the space, just being there. Time passed slowly. A nurse came out to give them a vague update. Scout had multiple rib fractures, internal bruising, signs of head trauma. They'd stabilized him, but he wasn't out of the woods. He'd need surgery. The next 24 hours were critical. Lily didn't ask any questions. She just curled up on the bench, arms around her knees. Caleb couldn't take his eyes off her. He kept thinking about how easily he could have stayed in his garage, how close he came to ignoring that scream. And for what? Another bolt on an old truck? Then finally she spoke, barely louder than a breath. "Why didn't anyone help?" It hit like a punch. Caleb looked down at his hands, still stained with Scout's blood, and took a long, steady breath. I don't know, he admitted. Sometimes people freeze, or look away, or think someone else will step in. She didn't respond, but he saw it, her shoulders sank just a little, as if hearing someone say it out loud made it more real, more unfair. He reached out, hesitated, then placed his rough, calloused hand over her small, trembling one. But I'm here now, he said, and from now on, someone will. It wasn't a promise he threw around lightly. Caleb had made promises before that he couldn't keep. But this one he meant. Because looking at Lily and seeing what she'd just gone through, he realized something. Scout wasn't the only one fighting to survive. There was another life in pieces, one just starting. And maybe, just maybe, he'd been given a second chance to do what he couldn't do all those years ago. Save them both. By the time Monday rolled around, Scout was still in the ICU, clinging to life, and Lily was quietly placed back in her fourth-grade classroom like nothing ever happened. No welcome back, no counselor waiting, just a plastic chair, a half-used pencil, and a teacher too distracted to meet her eyes. Lily didn't speak. She didn't raise her hand. And when the kid next to her leaned over and whispered, "Heard your dog got beat up, 'cause he's a mutt," she didn't even flinch. What no one told her was that kids talk. And in Maple Grove Elementary, gossip traveled faster than facts. Some students said Scout had attacked someone and was put down. Others said Lily screamed so loud she broke a window. The three boys who did it, still strutting through the hallways like nothing happened, still smirking, still dangerous. And their parents, lawyers, loud ones. The school had addressed the incident privately, according to a statement. Translation: they did nothing. Meanwhile, Lily started disappearing inside herself. No more drawings, no more giggles, no more spark. Caleb noticed it immediately. Every morning, he'd drive her to school in his old Chevy, and every morning she grew a little quieter. He'd ask if she wanted music. She'd shake her head. He offered to walk her in. She shook her head again. It was like someone had turned the volume of her spirit all the way down. But one afternoon, something strange happened. Caleb came to pick her up and saw her sitting alone on the swing set, not moving. It wasn't recess. School had ended an hour ago. Teachers were gone. And Lily? She just sat, staring at the dirt, Scout's collar clenched in her hand. Caleb walked over, sat beside her on the creaky swing next to hers, and waited. Minutes passed. Then she said, "He used to chase my shadows." Caleb looked at her. "Scout," she whispered. "Every time I walked, even at night, he'd jump at my shadow like it was a game." He smiled gently. Sounds like he knew how to make darkness look fun. That night, back at Caleb's house, he pulled some old tools from his garage, handed Lily a hammer and a pair of gloves way too big for her hands, and said, "We're building something. For Scout." She blinked. "Is he coming home?" "We're going to believe he is," Caleb said. And just like that, she started hammering. Piece by piece, plank by plank, they built a small wooden shelter in his backyard. Nothing fancy, just a frame, a roof, a warm corner for Scout if and when he returned. But something happened during that build. Lily spoke more, asked questions, smiled just a flicker, but it was there. Caleb showed her how to use a level. She showed him how to doodle hearts into the wood when he wasn't looking. It wasn't just a shelter. It was a place for her hope to live. Somewhere physical. Somewhere real. Because when the world refuses to see your pain, sometimes you have to build a space for it yourself. And Caleb knew, if they could build something out of broken pieces, then maybe, just maybe, she wouldn't stay broken too. What he didn't know was that something else had just started building too. A storm. Quiet at first. But it was coming. And this time, the town would have no choice but to hear it. Caleb didn't intend to start a wildfire, he just wanted people to care. One night, after putting Lily to bed, he sat on his worn-down porch with his laptop, heart still heavy. The shelter they'd built was standing strong, Scout was still fighting in ICU, and Lily, well, she was fighting too, just in quieter ways. So Caleb did the only thing that felt right. He told the world. He posted a photo of the shelter with the caption, "This is for a dog named Scout. He saved a little girl's life, and 3 boys nearly beat him to death while she screamed for help. No one came. No one stopped it. But we're still hoping he makes it home. Because some things deserve to survive. He closed the laptop and didn't think much of it. But the next morning, his phone didn't stop buzzing. The post had gone viral. 20,000 shares by sunrise. Comments from strangers. Donations pouring in. People from across the country. Some who'd lost pets, others who'd survived bullying or abuse, were flooding the thread with support, heartbreak, outrage. And it didn't stop. Animal rights groups reposted it. News outlets called his landline. A major rescue organization reached out offering to help cover Scout's hospital bills. Caleb was stunned. And grateful. But mostly stunned. What shocked him even more was how quickly the story turned local. Maple Grove wasn't used to attention. And suddenly, it was under a spotlight it never asked for. That pressure cracked something open. Teachers who had once stayed quiet began to speak up. Turns out, this wasn't the first time those 3 boys had hurt someone. Other kids came forward. One parent even admitted their child was too afraid to report it. But now, the community couldn't ignore it anymore. The silence that once protected those boys was now burning around them. Of course, the parents of the boys tried to clean it up. They hired a PR rep, released a tone-deaf statement calling it a misunderstanding between children, claimed the dog overreacted, and their sons acted out of fear. But the internet wasn't having it. Not with photos of Scout wrapped in gauze, hooked to IVs, his swollen eyes still trying to stay open. No one could look at that and call it a misunderstanding. Lily saw the post eventually. Caleb showed it to her when she was ready. She read the words slowly, lips moving with each line. When she reached the end, she didn't say a word. She just pulled the phone closer and scrolled through the comments. Thousands of strangers writing things like, "You're so brave," and "Scout's a hero," and "We believe in you." She looked up at Caleb and whispered, "They see us now." It wasn't much, but to Caleb it was everything. Because something irreversible had happened. A town that once turned its back had been forced to look into a mirror. And for the first time, it didn't like what it saw. The truth was out. The story had power. And the girl they tried to silence? She was just getting started. The call came just after 6 a.m. Caleb had fallen asleep in the armchair again, his phone vibrating against his chest. He answered on instinct, expecting bad news. But instead, the nurse's voice was calm, excited even. "Scout's awake." 2 words. That's all it took. By the time Caleb and Lily arrived at the animal hospital, the staff already knew them by name. They were led through quiet hallways until they reached the recovery room. And there he was, Scout, propped up on a soft mat, tubes still attached, his body wrapped in more gauze than fur, but those amber eyes, they were open. And they were searching. Until they found her. Lily didn't run, didn't cry. She walked straight to him, dropped to her knees, and placed her head against his chest like it was the only place on earth that had ever felt safe. Scout blinked slowly. His tail barely moved, just a twitch. But it was enough. It was everything. The nurse, touched by the scene, snapped a photo. That photo would be seen by millions within 48 hours. The internet exploded. The caption read, "Scout woke up, and the first thing he saw was the girl he protected." People around the world lit up. Comments from France, Brazil, Japan, even a group of firefighters from Canada sent a video message saying they named their new station dog Scout in his honor. Caleb scrolled through the flood of messages, stunned by the sheer force of strangers caring about a dog and a girl in a small town they'd never heard of. But it wasn't just sympathy they wanted change. Letters poured into the school board. Parents demanded accountability. The mayor's office was forced to respond. And for the first time, the families of the 3 boys stopped talking through lawyers and started hiding behind closed doors. Meanwhile, back in Maple Grove, something else was shifting. Neighbors who had once looked away when Lily screamed now brought over home-cooked meals. One man offered to build a ramp for Scout once he came home. A group of teenagers started volunteering at the animal shelter. And the most unexpected moment came when Caleb found a letter on his porch. No name, Just 5 words written in shaky penmanship. Thank you for not freezing. He didn't need a signature. He knew it came from someone else who had once stayed silent. Someone who didn't want to anymore. As for Lily, she visited Scout every day. Brought him his favorite toy. Sat beside him with her math homework. Whispering updates like, "You didn't miss much. Division's still the worst." But deep down, she knew something big had changed. Her voice was coming back. Slowly. Her laugh even showed up once. Quiet but real. And every time Scout lifted his head just enough to press his nose against her hand, it was like a reminder. You're not alone anymore. He was fighting for her just as much as she had fought for him. And somehow, a battered German Shepherd had done what dozens of adults couldn't. He made an entire town feel again. Scout was healing slowly but surely. His body still carried the bruises, but his spirit, somehow, remained untouched. Each day he managed a little more. A longer look, a stronger tail wag, a half step closer to the door when Lily walked in. And with every inch of progress, something else began to shift. Lily herself. Caleb noticed it first in the little things. She started humming in the car again. Not loudly, not cheerfully, but the kind of soft hum that meant she was somewhere else in her mind. Somewhere safer. She began drawing again, too. Nothing grand, just simple things. A dog under a tree, a house with a swing, a tiny girl hugging a massive, smiling German Shepherd with bandages on his legs and a crown on his head. That's when the school counselor reached out. She'd seen the news stories, seen the photo, the shelter, the flood of support, and she wanted to meet Lily. Not to fix her, but to hear her. Caleb asked Lily if she'd be okay with it. She shrugged. That was the most he ever got from her. But she didn't say no. So the following afternoon, they sat in a quiet room, sunlight streaking through the blinds, a box of tissues between them, though neither reached for it. First, Lily said nothing. The counselor didn't push. She simply said, "You don't have to talk about the bad parts. You can start with what you love about him." Lily blinked, then whispered, "He chases shadows." The woman smiled. That's a good start. Over the next few minutes, her words came in broken pieces. Scout always waited outside the bathroom door. He howled during fireworks and needed his ears covered. He once tried to jump in the washing machine because he thought a squeaky toy was inside. Caleb, waiting outside, overheard all of it. But then her voice started trembling. Her fingers picked at the edge of her sleeve. Her eyes went somewhere else. They laughed when they hit him. The counselor didn't move. They laughed, Lily repeated. They said he was just a dog. They kept saying that while they hurt him. While I screamed. Silence filled the room like water. Heavy. Drowning. The counselor's voice was barely audible. That shouldn't have happened. None of it should have. Lily nodded. But she wasn't crying. Not anymore. By the end of the session, something had shifted again. The next day, the school board received a formal statement from the counselor. A full report based on Lily's testimony. Not speculation. Not rumor. First-hand truth. Backed by public pressure and community outrage. They had no choice but to act. A formal investigation was launched. Old complaints about the boys resurfaced. Things the school had buried or ignored. One teacher resigned before the report even dropped. And the boys? Suddenly they weren't smirking in the hallway anymore. 2 of the boys' parents tried to reach out to Lily's father through lawyers. Offered settlements. Apologies. Carefully worded letters written by PR teams. Lily never read them. She didn't need their guilt wrapped in pretty paper. Because now, she had something more powerful than pity. She had a voice. And when a child who's been silenced finally speaks, you can either listen or be silenced by the truth that follows. 3 weeks after Scout first opened his eyes, the vet finally said the words Lily had been holding her breath for. He's ready to go home. Caleb nearly choked on his coffee. Lily didn't say anything right away. She just stared at the doctor like the words were a trick, like she'd misheard them. But then she smiled. Not a soft flicker. A real one. The kind that pushes through layers of hurt and finally sees light. When they brought Scout out from the back, wearing a custom vest to help with his weak spine and stitches still tucked under his fur. He looked smaller but prouder. His walk was slow, shaky. But when he saw Lily waiting at the door, he pushed forward with every ounce of strength he had left. And when she ran to meet him, knees buckling under the weight of everything she'd been holding, he leaned into her like gravity had never mattered. Caleb cleared a space in the back of the truck, laid down a blanket, and lifted Scout in with a gentleness that said this wasn't a dog. This was family. When they pulled into the driveway, the shelter Lily had built was waiting. The wood had weathered slightly from spring rain, but it stood tall, solid, like a promise made real. She led Scout inside herself, step by step, and laid down beside him on the soft mat Caleb had placed. They stayed there for hours. No words, just breathing, curled into each other like time didn't exist. But Scout's return wasn't the end. It was the beginning. The town of Maple Grove had changed. You could feel it. People who once turned their heads now showed up. One neighbor offered to build a new fence around the Heart Yard. A local vet tech started a campaign called Scout Stand, free trauma care for injured animals. Kids at school wrote letters to Lily. Some apologized. Some just said, "You're really brave." And then came the invitation. A community event was being organized downtown, something small but public. The theme, Voices that Deserve to be Heard. They wanted Lily to speak, and Scout to be there too. Caleb didn't pressure her. He simply told her about it and left the decision in her hands. The night of the event, she asked for her best dress. The one her mom had bought her before she passed. Still fit, just barely. They walked onto the stage together, Lily holding Scout's leash, Caleb standing quietly off to the side. The lights weren't bright. The crowd wasn't huge. But the silence? It was electric. Lily stepped up to the mic, knees shaking, voice almost too small to hear. She looked out at the faces. Neighbors, classmates, teachers, and then down at Scout, whose eyes never left her. And she spoke. "I didn't think anyone would help, and no one did at first. But someone heard me. One person. Then the world did. Scout didn't save me just from those boys. He saved me from being invisible. He made me feel real." She paused, then lifted her chin. "And now I'm not afraid to speak, because if I don't, who will?" There was no applause at first, just silence. The kind that wraps around your spine and makes you feel like something sacred just happened. Then slowly the crowd stood. Not a single person sat. Not one. It wasn't a standing ovation. It was a recognition. Lily and Scout walked off the stage like they were walking into a new life. Because they were. Justice didn't come from a courtroom or a headline. It came from hearts waking up. From a girl finding her voice. From a town deciding silence wasn't good enough anymore. And from a dog who never once stopped protecting her, even when the world did.